Sponsor an orphan, and you'll help support a vulnerable child to have the education they've always dreamed of, so they can build a brighter future. You'll be feeding a hungry stomach and a hungry mind with knowledge that will last them a lifetime. That's the power of an education. Sponsor an orphan now with Islamic Relief.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. I'm Preacher Moss, host of the SOS, the Shout Out Show. Hope that you're having a wonderful Tuesday. Want to give some shouts and kudos to everybody that tuned in yesterday. Great reactions, great suggestions, and shows of support. I think we're going to reach back and do another show about why Muhammad Ali should have a stamp. Shout out also to everybody who's just trying to stay cool. It is fire out there, brothers and sisters. Shout out to people who are melting in the UK. You hit 102, 103, possibly 104 today, Fahrenheit. God bless you. They're talking about having to put salt on the street so they don't melt. The train can't run. I mean, I'm not saying this is the end of the world, but damn it, you can see it from here. That's the first thing. The second thing, brothers and sisters, is in this conversation today, our subject matter is a winning conversation on debt. Now, what I'm going to talk about when I say a winning conversation is that we engage the aggressive and progressive understanding of what debt is, and then we're going to talk about it in the second half a little bit more about, okay, how do you frame this in terms of why and how is it applicable to you? You know, I will tell you where I came from with this whole spot, this space. A lot of most of you know that I was a comedian. I'm gonna tell you guys something. Being a comedian is a very tough grind because you are self-employed. You don't have regular hours, if you will, and even being an entertainer. Because you deal with a heavy amount of upfront debt, you may hit and be a star, but you're going to wind up trying to pay off that debt. And while you pay it off, you're accumulating new debt. But that's not the point. I thought this would be a really, really good subject because I kind of feel that if we have a better understanding in terms of a global understanding of debt and a less complicated relationship to money, I believe that though we're supposed to be having a recession, technically we're in a recession right now, but though we're having a recession, I still believe that if you understand what debt is, you can use it to your advantage. You can learn to flip certain things around to your advantage. In many of the ways of the big corporations, and many of the ways of the banks and things like that, when you start looking at how the banks operate, looking at how companies operate, what you're going to find out is that ultimately you're out of the picture. You are not in that conversation of tax credits and breaks and bonds and stuff like that. You're not in that conversation. You are in a very, very low level conversation. A lot of times it has to do a lot with consumption, a lot of the finality, if you will, of trying to pay off things that are consumable, credit cards, cars, student loans, things like that. They are consumable debt, if you will. You know, the only thing that is not consumable debt is actually when you have a house, if you will. Sorry about that. When you have a house. So today, this would probably be a good day to take out your pen and paper. We're going to talk about that. And I'm going to give you guys some narratives and some anecdotes of how I got to this point. And I'll even talk about some of the things I had to come up with mentally to frame how I was going to survive, per se, through COVID, how I was going to survive if something happened, I had catastrophic illness. You know, these things are things that you're constantly thinking about because you have to figure out at some point in time, either you're not going to be able to get to the money or the money's not going to be able to get to you. And at that point in time, it's an issue of how much money you have accumulated, and how much money you have accumulated has a lot to do with how much debt that you're holding on to. All right. So shout out to Sister Reed. She just got back from Chicago. I hope everything went well. I texted you. I said that I hope that your cousin had a peaceful homegoing, if you will. And we're glad to see you back on the show. So without further ado, brothers and sisters, this is the Shout Out Show. This is Preacher Moss talking about a winning conversation on debt. We'll be right back. All right, and we're back, everybody. Before we get into today's topic, I want to make sure that we give some love and some understanding and some well wishes to our people who are in the comment section. You know who they are, the stars in the building. We're talking about the Shout Out Show family, the Shout Out Show soldiers. Let's roll them out before we get to our topic. Hello, Sister Ree. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. That is the peacings. That is the peace. The blessings and the mercy of Allah on your family and on your travel and all your goodwill and the things you do. May you continue to be blessed. Good to see you back safely. Next up, we got my man, Mr. 6 o'clock, Altaf Rashid. Wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear brother. Our Canadian envoy from Canada checking in with us. I'm going to give you all the territories. I'm going to give you Toronto, Saskatchewan, British Columbia. I'm gonna give you all of Newfoundland. I'm gonna give you all of that. You are the official ambassador of Canada, not from Toronto. So you got a promotion there. How about that? Next up, wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, to my dear brother, my little brother JT, better known as Johnny L. Thomas, but he's always gonna be JT to me. Thank you so much for tuning into the show, Hawk beloved. We appreciate you tuning in, and hopefully this is something we can all talk about. This is a topic, and I'm going to encourage everybody to ask questions. As you know, we always put a plug in there for BeFinanciallyIndependent.com. In that apparatus of BeFinanciallyIndependent.com, we've had Sister Maxine B. Cade on the show talking about that. I'm going to revisit some parts of it. I'm going to expand a little bit, and hopefully be able to have her come back on the show talking about what we can do to protect our resources, protect our finances, our assets during the anticipated recession. All right. And my main man, what's going on, Bilal? Wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Oh, you got no AC, brother? You just might as well pull over and catch on fire. Man, I'm sorry, brother. In fact, turn off the Shout Out Show. You making me hot. Man. How do you have no AC, Bilal? In the car? You're in the car? Driving AC, no AC. Okay, man. You don't even have to finish. You said it's hot as. We can fill that in, brother. We can fill that in. No problem. But listen, man, get to someplace where it's cool. I hope you don't have the queen there. I hope you don't have the queen in the car firing up. That's not right. That's not right. All right. So much love to you, brother. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully we'll send some cool vibes your way. And wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to our sometime consultant producer, only on Thursdays and Tuesdays. No, I'm just kidding. What's going on, Sister Tana Whitfield? I hope you're having a good day, and good conversation earlier today. Very good conversation. And I will give you some background. So things have changed. How about that? Things have changed. I told you it was going to change. Things started changing. Okay. What is this thing about a winning conversation on debt? And here's the deal. I love my parents. I love my relatives, my cousins, but none of us grew up rich. None of us grew up rich. I didn't know any rich people until I was an adult. And even then, they were like semi-rich, like they were close to money. So when I was living in Long Beach, California, I was teaching, and I had left the teaching business and got into comedy, stand-up comedy, struggled. And at one point in time, I had to do my taxes. And I was riding down the road, and the place where I would run, I would always see this sign for an accountant, this guy named Dick Getzman. May Allah be pleased with him. Dick Getzman, old Jewish guy. And I took my money in. I took my information in to Dick Getzman to do my taxes. He did my taxes, and he charged me what I thought was, at the time, a lot of money. And I was like, that's a lot of dough. But really, it wasn't in terms of how much I had made. But that's not the point. I was talking to Getzman. He was like, what is it you do? And I told him I was a comedian, and I was an entrepreneur, and I was a producer. I was all these things. And he was like, I figured that from your receipts and stuff like that. And he said, it's very interesting because I owed some money. He said, it's really interesting that you came in to speak to an accountant, that you didn't try to do your taxes yourself. I said, well, there were some things that were complicated. I was a little worried about. And I thought they were above my pay grade. And he said, it's interesting. And he began to talk to me about entertainers. The scope that a lot of entertainers, particularly African Americans, wind up in some type of financial dysfunction or disarray. He said, not because they make a lot of money. He said, because they don't understand debt. He said, not because we can make a lot of money, because we don't understand debt. He said, at every point that you make money, there's debt around the corner. He said, every dollar that you make is not a dollar that you make. He said, the laws and the Constitution have allowed for people to take parts of your money. And I said, hey, Mr. Getzman, I understand that. But he said something that was really, really important. It was intriguing. He said, now, let me tell you about African Americans. I'm like, what are you going to tell me? He said, the African American has a debt narrative when it comes to finances here in the United States. I said, please continue. He said, if you look at the laws, just the scope of opportunity for African Americans coming out of slavery, he said, everything is tied to get to the promised land. You have to immerse yourself in debt to get there. Thus, if you wanted to be a farmer, you were not able to buy equipment at the normal market price because you were black. So that allowed systemically that people could overcharge you for things, whereby when you bought your produce to the market, you bought your goods to the market, you were already at a deficit. And that deficit meant that you were, the more you worked, the more you got into debt. This is nothing new. But the thing that I remember most talking to Mr. Gibbs, he said, but you have to understand the levers and the instruments to make sure that you stay in a debtor relationship with damn near everything you do in the United States. There's a movie with Samuel Jackson and another brother. He played in the Avengers. I forget his name. But they were two black bankers. It was on Apple TV Plus. They played as two black bankers, and they would hire white people to front for them, and they ran the bank. Beautiful, a beautiful, beautiful movie, factual. This is not being made up. This is black men wanting to run a bank back in the 40s and the 50s, and they did it. The problem was the white establishment could not handle that. And it's a microcosm of the fact that here in the United States, one of the biggest overlooked aspects of white supremacy is in the financial arrangement, if you will. Thank you. Anthony Mackie was the name of the actor I was talking about. I can't. Satana, can you bring up the name of the film? Was it called The Banker? I can't remember. Was it called The Banker? In any event, it's just this whole scope that, as Mr. Getzman said, he says it's not that African Americans are already in this debtor situation. When you come out of the womb, you're in debt. What he said was interesting was the profitability that people are able to attach to African American achievement and coming over is the fact that people are amazed that out of this whole debtor situation, you can still produce millionaires and billionaires. You can still produce a P. Diddy, LeBron James, because they haven't figured out how to put debt on a human spirit, to somehow take debt and interject it into how you frame out culture or will or determination or creativity. You know, they haven't figured out how to do that. But for the people that don't have it, they're going to tax the hell out of you. So let me move forward on this idea. We have a recession coming. Recessions normally last about 11 months. But I found in my travels as a comedian, you have to prepare months in advance. I learned my success as a comedian financially was to be able to deal in cash, to move away from the evil word of credit. Deal in cash. And if I had to deal in cash, what was interesting was that you're able to negotiate a different price point because people are willing to have their money right then, right there, as opposed to run through situations. Like you have all these different pay systems, Zelle. People like their money in their hand right there. And it's anxiety because if people don't have it in their hand, they're worried about it going away. You have leverage because a lot of people don't have cash. Flip this thing around. As we go into a recession, you have to look at some of these staples of the things that get you to a recession. When we were going through COVID, something was really interesting happened. During COVID, I had managed to bank a lot of credit. When I say bank a lot of credit, it means that I wasn't carrying a heavy debt load on my credit. Keep it under 30%, keep it under 25%. And this is important because as a comedian, we live on credit. You know, we do a show, somebody's, I'm going to send you a check. You might not get that check for 3 weeks, 30 days, but you already assume the airfare costs, the hotel costs, ground transportation, rental car, gas, food. You've assumed all it, and now you're waiting for your money to take that money off the books. You're already put into a situation. You got a bunch of accounts payable as opposed to accounts receivable. But what was interesting during COVID is that I remember going through my credit cards and checking the balances, understanding that this thing was a little bit more than what we thought it was, and I saw that my credit limits have been slashed. Now I'm saying my credit limit has been slashed. These are on credit cards that didn't really even have a lot of balances. You're talking about $500, $600. But they slashed it according to whatever algorithm they use, they slashed it and they could get away with it because in the paperwork it says they can do that. In the paperwork it says they can do that. When they're in that fine print, they have permission to do it. And when you take the card, you sign off, you say yes. Somewhere in all that wording, and you've allowed them to give you, but you've basically allowed them to, at one point in time, give you credit, but to pay off the credit, you're going to do it in a debtor relationship. That's called interest. But it was interesting they were able to do that. And when you begin to understand what I'm talking about, here's the killer part. Countries enjoy sovereign debt. And what I mean by sovereign debt is that countries like the United States, China, Saudi Arabia, Russia, UK, the rich have plundered those countries. And they've plundered those countries because, one, most of them don't pay taxes. But number two, they enjoy the privilege of the country in terms of sovereign debt. And when I say sovereign debt, what I'm saying is countries don't pay their bills off. They don't pay their bills off. When they have debt, here's the word, they repackage debt. So today I want to introduce that concept to you, that as we move into this space of a potential recession, whether it comes or not, I'm telling people do this because I'm doing it myself. Repackage your debt. Repackage your debt. One of the things I learned is it's not a crime to use somebody else's money to reduce your debt. So you have $1,000 loan at 24% interest. You can take another $1,500 loan at 6%, pay off that one, and you're still going to come out ahead and be able to move the money around. It may be the same terms in terms of the payments and things like that, but you're not doing it at this exorbitant rate. You know, the less you can deal with interest, the more freedom you have to move the money around. And guess what? Pay down your debt. I have an American Express card. Don't use it often. Yeah. They say don't leave home without it. I leave home without it all the time. Because in that American Express card, they give you a great credit limit. But here's the deal. You're talking almost 29% credit. And the killer part is when you run into society, the stores and the shopping centers and the mall are built upon the same concept. You're not dealing with the gravitas, the creme de la creme, the mom and pop stores, the corner stores and things like that. Even your local banks, in many regards, understand that they cannot survive unless they put you in debt. That the markup on an item is made sure that they make money and you don't make any money, or a little money, or you don't save money, but you're going to lose money because they're dealing with the same monster that you're dealing with in a business capacity. So I would encourage everybody to think about that. We're going to be right back. This is Preacher Moss on the SOS talking about a winning conversation on debt. babies. Welcome to Radio WCUC, Convenient Urgent Care, home of the smart patient. This is DJ What It Do. You know what time it is. It's the top of the hour, and the request lines are open. You know what you want to hear. I know what you want to hear. Operators are waiting.
I just got to hear Don't Get the COVID.
Don't get the COVID. Put your mask back on. The Delta COVID, more contagious than before. Don't get the COVID. Go on and get the vaccine. You know that it can keep you safe, and your people living up in your space. Don't get the COVID. You need to wash your hands. The Delta COVID is more deadly than before. Don't get the COVID. Go on and get your vaccine. You know that it can keep you from dying. Don't leave your family all alone and crying. Don't get the COVID.
We invite you to join our fight against COVID and against misinformation. It's time to listen to the doctors and trust the science.
When I think of people dying that don't have to die, it makes me sad. Now's the time to be sober. Together we can make this thing over. Let's fight the COVID. Convenient urgent care, home of the smart patient.
All right, and we're back. I'm going to emphasize, everybody, if you have a subscription to Apple TV Plus, please go back and watch The Banker. I'm going to watch it myself. Thank you, Doug. We appreciate it. Just shout out to Doug. Doug's been doing big things, making all the money with the USFL. God bless you, man. I know we'll be getting out there doing some food sooner or later. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my main man, Eric Carter. Brother, I hope you're staying cool out there. I hope that you are staying cool. Let's get back to what we were talking about. You know, I would like to jump from that conversation I had with Mr. Dick Getzman back in 1999 forward to when I decided to purchase my home. I had at the time what's called comedian credit, which means that when you go out on the road, part of you saving money is that when you do your taxes, you write everything down. You might have made $200,000, but by the time you write it down, it may look like $24,000. I'm talking about I write 2 picks. I itemized 2 picks if you let me to. I had a thing of Tic Tacs. I was like, every Tic Tac costs $20. It doesn't matter. We do this. I'm only mimicking what the businesses do. So don't hate on me. Don't hate the player, hate the game. When I went to buy my house, the first thing they tried to tell me was the loan that they were going to give me. And they looked at my credit and they said, well, and this is when they were giving out. This is right before the housing crash. They were giving out homes to people who were homeless. Anybody could get a loan. If you had a pay stub, if you had a heartbeat, a pulse, you can get a house back in 2005, right? And I remember what Mr. Getzman said. He had passed away by then. But what I remember was he said you have to frame your own threshold for debt before somebody can give it to you. Let me say it again. You have to frame your own threshold for debt before somebody could give it to you. One of the things that was vastly overlooked in terms of Reconstruction back in the 1800s was not the fact that Black people were given the right to vote and things like that. It was the understanding and the unwritten rule that the banks put in place to make sure that these Blacks that were coming out of freedom would experience a long period of debt, a very long period of debt. If you look for the Reconstruction into the middle of the 1910s, 1920s, literally up into the Great Depression, you had very few African Americans that were millionaires or well-to-do, right? We talk about Black Wall Street and things like that. Yeah, but you have to look down in Durham. But here's my point. The tools and apparatus to get, if you will, lift yourself out of debt, they weren't there. Even more so, the people who were able to lift themselves out of debt were dealing with people that looked like them. So black people started doing black business. And that was the thing that allowed people to move forward. That the money stayed in the community. And with the money staying in the community, people were able to move themselves. So when you went to Mr. Charlie down here to get a shovel, Mr. Charlie could charge you $70 for a shovel. Brother William down here won't charge you $70 for a shovel. He charge you $10 for a shovel. Mr. Charlie down here, $70 for a shovel, and he makes you pay on it every day. Mr. Williams said, this is $10, pay it off. It was a bit, I want to say genius, because it allowed for profitability among the black community. Then we got into black banks and stuff like that. And then, of course, nobody wanted that. But here's my point, though. Mr. Getzman explained to me that you have to create your own debt threshold. Nobody needs to know it. But whatever that is, you have to push and negotiate below that. They tried to give me an outrageous rate for my house. I pushed back. I knew what I could afford on an adjustable mortgage, and you make sure that you have an adjustable mortgage at the time that you have between this amount of money and this amount of money. When place a show, you would have it. And whatever it wasn't, if it was lower, then you would take that money, you would roll it over. You would use that money to pay off other things. We have to get back to that. We far too often let people dictate what our debt threshold is going to be, and we sadly live up to it. When I say live up to it, I mean that we're not asking questions. I know all of you know this, but play this game if you get a chance. Play this game and call your credit card company and tell them that you refuse to pay the interest rate that they have. Threaten to cancel your card. Because when you cancel their card, they can't make any money off of you. The debt relation is over. The funniest conversation you're ever going to have is when you pay off your credit card and people are like, well, what'd you do that for? Ironically, when COVID was over and a lot of us started getting back on our feet, alhamdulillah, all the people that denied you credit, all the people that slashed your credit limits, guess what they did? They gave it back to you, and they gave it back to you with more. They gave you back to you with more, and they hope that you're going to use that credit. I mean, think about this. What the hell is credit? Satana, what the hell is credit? Credit is time on your money, and it's not to your advantage. It is an elongation of a financial relationship that's not even there. That people can come up with these instruments of value, and it only applies to you. I mean, look at when we had the housing crash here, when Obama was there. Let me tell y'all something. The thing that turned this country upside down was a thing called a collateral debt obligation. It's called a CDO, a collateral debt obligation. And to this day, people don't know what the algorithm was that crashed the whole country, that caused people to lose their jobs, that caused people to lose their houses. They still don't know what it was. That's how intricate an instrument it was. All I know is this instrument allowed the banks to get into the mortgage business. So they cut out the mortgage broker. You don't have to go to so-and-so or Rocket Finance. You can come straight to your bank, and we'll give you the loans, because when they give you loan paper, they're getting you into debt. They're processing that paper, they're getting you into debt. They don't care if you could afford the home. They didn't care whether you could afford the home back then, 2007. That was not their point. The point was they had you in a debt relationship. And even if you lost your house, you still had to pay for it. I'm just saying, look out, brothers and sisters. Now, I know we're about to close off. I want to give a shout out to everybody. BeFinanciallyIndependent.com, Islamic Relief USA, of course, ConvenientUrgentCare.com, Bayan Islamic Graduate School. I'm going to give everybody some love on the show. But do me a favor. Please check out The Banker on Apple Plus TV. You know exactly what I'm talking about. See you guys tomorrow. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.